Hello, it's Mark here from Yokel Bear Reads. I'm going to be doing a book review today, and it's something that I've picked up. I wasn't expecting to pick this up, but I picked this up and reread it because it's a book that I've read a couple of times before. But I thought I'd give it another reread because in the light of the fact that there is a TV adaptation currently being shown on Amazon Prime or the BBC, depending on which country you're in. And that book is Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay. It's the story of a disappearance. It's set around a private college, a boarding school for young women in Australia in 1900. So it's very much a kind of historical period novel. But it's far more than that. And on a summer's day in Australia, the young women from this college go on a picnic to a place called Hanging Rock, which is, as I'll show in this review, is quite a strange place. And whilst they're there, 3 of the women and one of their teachers goes missing. They disappear without a trace in quite mysterious, almost supernatural circumstances. And this book is really about the ripple effects of what happens when they disappear, how that then affects the school they're at, the people at the school, their teachers, their classmates, but also the wider community as well. But believe me, this is not necessarily a crime book, though there are crime elements to it. This book works on many, many levels. And the TV adaptation so far, the 2 episodes that I've seen, is sticking roughly to the book. I also really loved, as I think I said, I love the film adaptation from the 1980s, which really kind of emphasised the more otherworldly supernatural elements. The TV series at the moment is doing a real good balance between the supernatural stuff and the other elements within this book. But also the TV series is also including some stuff that isn't in the book as well, which is going to be quite interesting to see how that plays out. Now, the way I thought that I would review this is I'm going to give you the 5 reasons why I think you should get this book and read it. And the first reason is the setting. As I said, 1900 in summer in Australia, in a fairly small town, kind of quite close to the outback, quite close to the wild. And the setting and the descriptions in this book, really, you can feel the heat of the summer. The descriptions of the kind of the dry roads, but then very, very close to the roads, the bush teeming with life. And quite dangerous life as well, poisonous snakes and stuff like that. Also as well, Hanging Rock itself, which is a geographical kind of anomaly, I guess you'd say. It's a big, huge set of rocks, almost kind of like an escarpment, a hill. Is almost like a character within itself with the descriptions of it. But all the way through the book, the rock, Hanging Rock, looms large. The dialogue seems to keep drawing back to the rock itself. The thoughts of the characters, you can sense in the background that once they've been to Hanging Rock, they can't really kind of get it out of their heads. I tell you what it's a bit like. If you've ever seen the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, with the Devil's Tower, and people keep, once they've get the message from the aliens, they can't get this thing out of their head. It feels a bit like this in the book, is that everyone is drawn back to the geographical kind of geological formation of Hanging Rock. And it's almost like a character within itself. But also as well, just the descriptions of kind of colonial Australia, about the houses, and one thing that really came across, because there's lots of descriptions about what the girls, what the women at this college wear, And it feels really uncomfortable because they're wearing the corsets and there's some really good descriptions about what they wear and how they're not allowed to take their gloves off until they get outside the town limits. And all the while, these descriptions about how hot it is. And so you almost feel the discomfort that they do as they're reading it. So that's the first reason to read it. It's absolutely superb on setting and giving a sense of the place that it's set in. Okay, the second reason is that this book is really about the clash of opposites. This book is about order versus chaos, civilization versus the wild. In the scenes with the college and the woman that runs the college, Mrs. Appleyard, all the way through the book, it's about how this event means she's losing control, and everything in the college is highly structured, highly timetabled. Kind of the manners and mores of society are always obeyed, and these rules are always there, and it's this real picture of order. But then you go just a little out of town, you go to somewhere like Hanging Rock, and it's like the wildness of nature and the unpredictability and the chaos of nature really comes across. And it's about this clash. Throughout the book, after the disappearance, Mrs. Appleyard really starts kind of going to pieces because this event has shattered any sense of order. It's unexplainable, it's inexplicable, and it doesn't fit into the kind of order of the world. It's also about kind of civilization versus the wild, or maybe, I guess in the Australian context, civilization versus the Aboriginal. The descriptions of the town and the stuff set in the town and the college is really about kind of, well, this is how the Victorians saw civilization and saw themselves as a civilizing force. But Hanging Rock is really depicted as somewhere wild but belonging to the people that lived before colonialisation. And there's a real sense that what happens at Hanging Rock is almost like a revenge. It's almost like a vengeance on this forced civilization. So in a way, it's almost kind of about colonialism. Maybe this is, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but maybe this is kind of a bit of a critique of colonialism. Also, as well, on the subject of order, there's a whole theme running through this book about time, and it looms large both in terms of the kind of order versus chaos, where all of the scenes with Mrs. Appleyard, there's normally something to do with the clock or what time it is and what time things are happening, a real sense of order. But when they arrive at Hanging Rock, people check their watches and they've all stopped, and all of the watches have stopped at the same time, and it's almost like that kind of chaos has entered the way that they're perceiving time. The other thing so that's the second reason, is that it's a real good kind of a real good analysis of kind of where order hits chaos, where the wild crashes into the rules of civilization. The third reason that you should read this is the supernatural, the ambiguous supernatural element to it. All the way through this, and this could have been so easily been a out-and-out kind of supernatural, strange, spooky horror story, but it's not. It's more delicate than that. The supernatural is very light touch. It gives it an almost dreamlike quality. You feel as though you're in a dream when you're reading certain parts of this book. There are often direct references to strange things that are never really explained. One of the people who didn't disappear says that she saw a strange red cloud in an otherwise cloudless day at the time that the disappearance happened. And I think that's never really kind of referred to again. You drop these hints that this could be something supernatural, but you're never really quite sure. Also, with the ending, and I'm not going to give too much away, the ending is really ambiguous. You read into it what you really want to read into it. And you never really get the disappearance explained. So if you're going into this thinking, hey, it's all going to be wrapped up at the end, no, it's not. But that's not the point of this book. It's almost like a dream where things just don't make sense. But it's really enjoyable being in that kind of dreamlike state. Now, Joan Lindsay actually did write an additional final chapter which goes into a bit more about what could possibly be going on. Now, that chapter is available. You can track it down online, but I'm not going to give the link or anything because I want to leave it up to people. If you want to go, if you want to see it, then go and find it. But otherwise, I'm not going to I guess I'm not making it easy for people because I think the book as itself is actually perfect as it is. And I think the ambiguity is what makes this book. As it was when I read that chapter, that additional chapter that isn't included in the published book, to be honest with you, it felt a bit like an add-on, and also it didn't really make that much more sense, other than pushing a bit more of a supernatural element to it. But I think the book's perfect as it is with the ambiguity. Okay, the fourth reason you should buy this, repressed sexuality. Oh my God, it is so... People in here are wound up like springs. There's all kinds of descriptions and all kinds of hints about almost kind of same-sex attraction between the women and sometimes between the women teachers and their pupils. I don't mean like young girls. I mean kind of like, there are 18, 19-year-old girls that are at the school. And there's a real kind of sense of repressed sexuality, of repressed homosexuality in places. And this really kind of builds up the fever pitch and the kind of dreamlike quality of the book. It's there's a lot of frustrated people in this book, not able to articulate how they feel about their own sexualities. Now, there's one bit in there where one of the teachers suddenly realises that one of the older girls looks like something painted by Botticelli, and the description in there is just so full of kind of repressed sexual thoughts that it's unbelievable, but it really fits in well. It kind of goes with the fact this is set in a very hot summer, so there's this claustrophobic pressing down on you feel to this book. Now, the other thing is also included within this repressed sexuality, there's a brilliant bromance in here between a character called Mike and a character called Albert. Now, in the book, it's really more seen as a bromance. And it's really interesting because when all of the kind of stuff in the book that's a clash very much revolves around the women in the book, about women, and the clash with nature, the clash with chaos and what have you. Now, with Mike and Albert is like a coachman. He's a servant at the college. There's a real sense that clash doesn't exist. Mike is kind of the son of a lord, so he's an aristocrat, but their friendship seems to crash through these dichotomies, and they actually become really good friends, and it's actually a really endearing kind of, I would guess, bromance, possibly a little bit more. Now, the TV series on at the moment has really pushed this a little bit further and said, look, this is potentially a gay relationship. So it's really interesting rereading this in the light of what they put in the TV series. Actually, yeah, I can see that in here. It's very much hinted at and what have you, but you can see that there is a developing possible sexual relationship between these two men. If there was a follow-up, what happened after Hanging Rock, you might actually see them together. So it's really interesting to see how that's developed in here. And the fifth reason is quite simply this. It's a cracking good story. If you want something that isn't just a straightforward plot-driven crime thing, or just a kind of, oh my God, something strange happened, supernatural, here's what it is story, and just want something that's ambiguous, dreamlike, a real good period drama, a real good analysis of things like repressed sexuality, and also about the kind of colonialism and the clash between civilization and imperialism, I guess you would say. Imperialism and the places that imperialism was trying to subdue. This is the book for you. It's a great read. So I would highly recommend this. Really, honestly, watch the TV adaptation. Go back and find the Peter Weir film from the 80s, but pick the book up at some point. Now, one thing I thought might be interesting is to actually just, what I would suggest to read next, following on from this. Well, there's two books that really kind of come to mind. And first of all, if you're talking about kind of repressed sexuality and, and people not being able to express their sexuality at that time, I think Maurice by E.M. Forster, and also kind of the bromance elements of Hanging Rock. E.M. Forster, Maurice, I think is somewhere to go next. On the kind of supernatural side of things and the psychological stuff and the light touch supernatural stuff, I think there's only one thing I can recommend, which is Henry James's Turn the Screw. Now, Joan Lindsay, who wrote Picnic at Hanging Rock, hinted in a couple of interviews that actually she was inspired to write Picnic at Hanging Rock after reading Turn of the Screw. And it was kind of the way that the tension is built up in the Turn of the Screw. She wanted to try and replicate in Picnic at Hanging Rock, and I think she did that really well. But yeah, Turn the Screw is somewhere where you should go next if you've not read that. So that's my book review. I absolutely loved Picnic at Hanging Rock. I'm enjoying the TV series. I got to give this a 5 out of 5. I can't find anything with this book that means that I should give it less. I absolutely love this book. It's probably in my top 10 books ever, and you really should, if you've not read it before, go and get yourself a copy, because I think you'd be in for a treat, to be honest with you. Okay, so that's me done. So thank you very much, and I'll be back with another review soon.